Hi, welcome to Yoga Selection. My name is Rod. Today's class we're focusing on a sequence for your lower back, lumbar spine. Make sure that you've got a chair, make sure that you've got a blanket, 2 blocks and a belt. And we'll begin in Adho Mukha Virasana, and it's naturally a really good pose for releasing the lower back, and we'll make a couple of adjustments to it to really heighten that back releasing effect. We'll have 2 blocks for the hands. Now I'm choosing blocks on their side edge. Potentially you might need high blocks on their tall end. I'm going to roll the blanket, so we're starting with a shoulder stand folded blanket, and depends a little bit on how thick your blanket is. For me, I'm going to roll it, quite a tight roll, about half the way from long end to long end. And you can see I get a roll roughly this shape, and then I can with both hands pull it quite firmly into the thigh crease here, where the top of the leg and the torso join. And as I come forwards with my hands, I'm still pulling that back into the thigh crease. The abdominal region lifts out and over the rolled blanket. Hands then onto the blocks. Your forehead will stay off the floor here, keeping your ears aligned with your upper arms. I'll give you a moment just to get there and ensure that the blanket is not being squeezed by the abdomen down the thighs towards the knees. It needs to stay back deep into the thigh creases there. And a really good way of heightening that nice lengthening and broadening effect that is naturally present in Virasana forwards. Make sure that without dropping your elbows, so keeping the elbows active and lifting, you're allowing the torso, the weight of the torso, to release down onto the blanket so that the blanket is able to press the thigh bones down. So the effect of the blanket, it's felt on the thigh bones. It shouldn't feel as if it's pushing up into the abdomen too much. Just relax that area and just let the weight of the torso help the blanket to press the thigh bones down. Now with your hands, you're pressing into the blocks, it's lifting your elbows, and it gives you the ability to move the back of your pelvis further away from the spine. So check it, your hands press down, and as a consequence of that, the back of the pelvis can move further back away from the spine. In addition to that, you're guiding your tailbone downwards towards the floor. There's a nice broadening there across the back waist area. The blanket helps to lift the spine up and into the skin of the back and spread the skin of the back in an outward direction, away from the spine towards the sides of the torso. Okay, from Adho Mukha Virasana, let's come up and we'll work with a variation of Uttanasana. And we're going to use the yoga chair. Potentially, you may need to drape your blanket here over the top of the chair. I'll show you. For me, I'm quite comfortable just having the chair as it is. Try it. You may potentially need a little bit of extra padding in the pubic bone region at the front of your pelvis. So we're going to work with the chair. And it's folded up state as we would pack it away. Have the chair, the back of the chair facing you, so that those of you that have the cushion yoga chair, so that the cushion, the seat, is facing away from the body. The distance with the chair away from the feet, it will vary according to your height. For me, it's roughly, this distance is a bit over the length of my own foot, and I'm resting the top of the chair into where the pubic bone is there, so that the chair can, as we come forwards, press back firmly up and into the thigh crease area. And as you can see here, I'm just with my hands making minor adjustments of the position of the chair, so that as I then come forwards, I can really get a sense of hanging off the chair. Very similar to those of you that are familiar with what it feels like to use the Iyengar wall ropes, to have some ropes supporting the pelvis. It just gives an added sense of traction here to the spine. We'll get to the spine, but first of all, the back ribs. Make sure that your back ribs are being contained, moving into the body. Here it's towards the chair.
Your front ribs, as you stay in the pose and release more in the pose, let them lengthen in a downward direction, down the seat of the chair towards the floor. Keep releasing, relaxing. Notice your breath. Each inhalation, the chest, it moves in that direction, down the chair towards the floor. Each exhalation, we want to ensure that the chest and the spine are not shrinking. Make sure that you can completely let go now. Let the spine, the rib cage, and that whole back waist area release and gravitate in a downward direction. Those of you that still have your hands to the floor, just have your arms now folded with your hands loosely holding the elbows. Again, just pay attention to the breath as you exhale. Make sure that you can completely let go, release the skin, the muscle fiber, the bones in that lumbar spine area. Okay, and then let's release and come up. Chair can go off to the side for the moment. We'll use it shortly. Take your two blocks, Ardha Mukha Svanasana, downward facing dog pose. Sometimes we can elevate our hands in downward facing dog pose. Today, and observing its effect on the lower back, will be raising the level of our feet using blocks. So have your blocks up against the wall. That will mean that they won't slide. And step your feet up and onto the blocks. Particularly those of you that have larger feet, longer feet, make sure that your toes are overlapping the edge of the block. We want to make sure that the heels are not in contact with the wall here. And just find the basic dog pose shape. And then once you've found it, have your heels a little higher than what you might otherwise have the heels in your more classical downward facing dog pose. And not for the sake of the heels, but so that your sitting bones are really clearly able to lift upwards. So check it, your sitting bones are lifting upwards and your thigh bones are pressing back into the body. Sitting bones lift, the root of the thigh bone, where it joins into the pelvis there, press back deeper into the legs. Now as your heels now start to descend, bring your attention to the back of your pelvis. Lift the back of the pelvis away from the spine as your heels descend. Finding that extra space at the front of the lumbar spine, the back of the lumbar spine, the right and the left side of the lumbar spine. Again, there's that sense, those of you that are familiar with what it feels like to hang in the ropes in dog pose, of the thigh bones being pulled back and the lower back enjoying that traction, that extra space that is created. Okay, let's release and come all the way up. We'll take our chair. Now some of you might have a stool, and commonly used in Iyengar yoga studios, a stool which is higher than the seat of the chair, so that when we then bring our foot up onto the seat of the chair, ideally the knee will be higher than the hip. When the knee is higher than the hip, the thigh crease, it deepens, it stays down. So just to ensure that that is the case, I'm going to boost the height of the seat of the chair up with one of the blocks there. The second block can just go off to the side. We're standing on the left foot, bringing the right foot up onto the block. Once you've got your basic shape with the knee over the ankle, checking that your shin bone is vertical and the left ankle directly under the left hip, you can bring your hands onto your hips. Having your hands onto your hips helps you to check the level of the hips, knowing that the right hip here commonly tends to sit higher than the left hip. Now the standing leg, you're pressing the thigh back so that the knee is straight, whilst doing that, turning the left inner groin back and away from the wall. With your right hand, the fingertips there, let's check that that right outer thigh crease is staying down so that your hips are level, the right hip and left hip the same height. Now, it's not so much a downward action. All we're doing there is stabilizing the pelvis, keeping it in position whilst we lift the spine and the chest up. You'll feel as you lift the spine and the chest up, there's a nice length that comes to the lower back, and without sucking the abdomen back, the navel quite naturally, quite spontaneously sits a little closer to the spine. Make sure that the region of your spine between your shoulder blades is moving deep into the body. Your elbows, they tuck a little bit back towards one another. Your head position, just check that you're looking directly ahead, not down, not up. Your face is parallel with the wall there in front of you. Okay, let's release, and we'll bring the right foot down, the left foot up. Just glance down at the right foot, make sure that the foot is straight, toes pointing directly ahead. Once you have your basic shape, hands onto the hips, right thigh press back so that the knee is straight, the right inner groin turn back so that the front of the right leg faces directly ahead. Common here for the right leg to start to distort towards the right side. So we often need that bit of an adjustment, the inner groin turning back so that the leg is facing directly ahead. With your hands, check that the hips are level. The left hip often lifts, keep it down. I say down, but then it's really just a matter of stabilizing the pelvis. We don't keep pulling it down. More important is that the spine actually lifts up. So without disturbing the angle of the pelvis, lift your spine up. You need to press the right heel down to get that added extra height and length through the spine. Check that the navel is, without hardening, sitting back a little into the body towards the spine. Roll your shoulders back, the bones at the tops of the shoulders pointing more directly upwards towards the ceiling. Eyes looking directly ahead, face parallel with the wall there in front. Okay, release. Pick the chair up. We'll bring the chair across to the right side of the mat. If you've got a slippery floor surface where you're practicing, make sure that you have at least 2 feet of your chair onto your yoga mat. Have the chair as close as possible to the wall. We'll keep that block there for the foot. We're going to take our second block. Now just the setup here, we're standing with the left foot facing the wall. And I'm aligning my left arch where I've got the block, so that in a moment when I bring my right foot up onto the block, I've got the heel and the left arch aligned. Just for balance, we can keep one hand to the wall as we step the right foot up onto the support. Check that your right shin is perpendicular to the floor, vertical, and it's common with groups of people to be in a more cramped position. So probably the most common adjustment here, we need to move the chair out a little bit further or hop the left foot a little bit further back and away from the chair. The right shin perpendicular. And then looking to the screen, we'll place the block between the knee and the wall. So initially we might need to hold the block in position with our hand, and then we can press the knee into the block and hold it there with just the knee, and then both hands can come to the wall. Now you'll be probably feeling it, the tendency for the right hip and buttock to protrude. So first adjustment and most important adjustment to the pose, the right buttock, it needs to move in, forwards towards the wall, right buttock in, but without letting the left thigh lean forwards. The right buttock in, but without letting the right outer thigh crease lift up. Keep it down, as if you had your thumb in that thigh crease, pulling it back and down towards the floor. So we're stabilizing the pelvis whilst lifting the chest, lifting the spine. Make sure that your chest is facing directly ahead. It's common for it to distort and slant a bit off to the right side. Turn the chest so that it faces directly ahead. Often with the wall this close, there's a tendency for the head to get a bit like a magnet pulled towards it. Check that you're keeping your face parallel with the wall. Okay, and then release. We'll pick the chair up and bring it around to the left side. Stand with your right arch level to the block. Check that your right toes are pointing directly ahead to the wall. Step the left foot up onto the support. Wedge the block between the inner knee and the wall. Once the block is in position, both hands to the wall, shoulder height. Left buttock move in, forwards, without the right thigh pushing towards the wall. Contain the front of the right thigh whilst moving the left buttock in. Left buttock in, the left outer thigh crease down. Don't confuse that with the left side of the chest dropping. Left outer thigh crease down, left chest lift up and move forwards. Spine lifting, chest lifting, keep your shoulders relaxed and releasing down and away from the ears. And then release. So good hip opening, getting the spine some mobility against the potential stiffness there that we might have in the hips and the groins. Other movements that can be really helpful for releasing your back are twisting movements. We'll look at some seated twists a little later in the sequence, but here we'll work with a standing version of Uttanasana 3. We'll keep the chair where it is. We'll move the chair in as close as possible to the wall, touching the wall. And then the foot block, we're going to just slide it over. Make sure that it is stable on the chair, but as close to the wall as possible. Now I'm going to have my back to the screen here, and that will be fine. You just watch as I shuffle across. I've got my right shoulder lightly touching the wall. And then I'll bring my right foot up onto the block, standing on my left foot. The second block, we'll just put it off to the side for the moment. So I'll give you a moment just to get into that position. So we're facing the chair. The left toes facing forwards towards the chair. We step the right foot up onto the block. And now we can add the twisting action. We bring the left hand to the wall in front, and then the right hand, it comes back. Try first of all shoulder height. If there's any difficulty with your shoulder, it can be a surprisingly difficult pose for some people's shoulders. If that is the case, then angle the arm down at a 45-degree angle, keeping the elbows straight. Preferably though, both hands to the wall, elbows bent, the hands are shoulder height. Now, most common, the right hip lifting here. So check that the right hip comes down until it's level with the left hip. It might have already been level with the left hip, in which case you don't move it further down. Just check that your hips are level. The right hip moving down often can make the left hip protrude and push out into the center of the room. Contain it. Move it towards, move the left hip socket towards the right hip socket. The left thigh, contain it. Make sure that the kneecap is gripping the left quadriceps firm so that we've stabilized the pelvis. As we now lift the left waist, as we're turning the torso, lifting the left chest, moving it towards the wall, the left back ribs spreading away from the spine, the front of the right shoulder moving away from the wall. Checking that your neck is comfortable to do so, look towards the right hand, looking over the right shoulder. Left chest lifting, the spine lifting. Press your left heel down to lift the spine further up. Okay, and then release. And we'll change. Picking the chair up, bringing it across and around to the right side. Block near to the edge of the chair. We start with both feet facing the chair, standing on the right foot. We bring the left foot up onto the block. We're turning then into the wall. If that's difficult for your left shoulder, have the elbow straight and the arm angled down, 45-degree angle. Otherwise, both hands to the wall, shoulder height. So, groups of people, most common adjustment necessary, that one of keeping the left hip down. It tends to lift up. So left hip down, level with the right hip. If your hips were already level, just be conscious of that, maintaining the hips in that level position. Without the right hip protruding, containing the right hip socket towards the left hip socket, right thigh press back. You feel as the thigh presses back, more weight comes to the right heel. Pressing the right heel down, we can start to lift the right waist, the right chest as we turn into the wall and looking over the left shoulder. Right back ribs spreading away from the spine. Right heel pressed down. Feel the back of the skull lift up without tilting the head towards the wall. Both shoulders releasing down away from the ears. Okay, and then release the chair out of the way, off to the side. Keep the block. Utkatasana, we'll use the wall for Utkatasana. Feet roughly a thigh bone's length away from the wall. We're going to use the block, we'll use a narrow block. And for today, right on the knee joint. Sometimes we have the block mid-thigh, sometimes we have it inner groin. For today, we'll have the block directly on the knee joint. Squeezing there, the block with both knees. Make sure that the feet are the correct distance apart. That will be, it'll vary from person to person. Some people, the feet will be quite close, for others a little wider apart. But if someone was standing in front of you and looking at your legs, ideally they would see that your legs are completely straight. Ankles hip width. And then hands onto your thighs, and we'll slide down the wall. And really common at this point for our body weight to get pushed towards the balls of the feet. Now, we want to redirect it to the heels, but not creating imbalance there. So we want to keep some weight in the ball of the foot, particularly the big toe bases, whilst pressing the outer heels down. Big toe bases firm, outer heels press firmly to the floor, squeeze the block, and then you can press the back of your pelvis into the wall. Now we need to be quite accurate there. It would be possible to press that region near the tailbone or the region near the base of the spine. Try to get right in the center there of the sacrum. Pressing there, lift your chest, roll your shoulders back. Feel how the navel sits back as the lumbar spine lengthens. Okay, and then push yourself back up the wall. And let's go again. So we'll slide down the wall. Feet firm to the floor, squeezing the block. Pressing the center of the sacrum into the wall. Let's now keep the sacrum to the wall, but bring your chest and shoulders a little forwards away from the wall. And now we get that sense of the sitting bones tucking under towards the knees. You'll feel the pubic bone lift a fraction and the navel sit back. And then shoulders back to the wall and push yourself back up the wall. There we go. One more time. This time we'll be raising the arms. It's that position to bring the torso a little bit away from the wall. It actually brings the supported Utkatasana into a more natural classical position where the torso is slightly angled forwards and not sitting anchored back with the shoulders over the hips. When you take your arms up, you'll be working to align your upper arms with your ears. Okay, hands start onto the thighs. Bend down. Bring the torso forwards a little, but then tuck the sitting bones under a little towards the knees. You'll feel the fronts of the thighs draw back. Sitting bones towards the knees, chest lift up. Now raise your arms, aligning the upper arms with the ears, squeezing the block, pressing down into the floor with the feet. Lift your arms and spine up simultaneously so that the navel sits back. Hands back to the thighs and come back up to your start position, remove the block, and we'll be sitting on the chair, and roughly the chair halfway between the end of your mat and the wall. Some people might need to move in a bit closer, some people might need to be a bit further away, but have that as your starting point. And before I sit down into the chair, here's the outer ankle.
Here's the outer heel, and then there's this section here, halfway between the two. That's the part of the foot we're going to be placing on the center line of the thigh, just a little bit back from the knee. So sitting first of all in the chair with your ankles under your knees, feet together. So this pose will be a really good one for upping the glutes, the piriformis muscle as well. As you bring that region of the foot that I just described up onto the left thigh, I'm going to slide the foot back a little bit so that as you look down there, the shin bone more or less parallel with the wall there in front. Now I went to that length of describing the part of the foot that needs to rest onto the thigh, because when we use that part of the foot tends to be quite stable and we're less reliant on holding the foot in position with the hands. So see if that is the case. We're going to bring the hands then off the right leg. You might just need to turn your head so that you can see your screen at this point. Got the yoga chair there, we can feel where the frame is. With the fingers pointing down, just bring your hands, both of them, back onto the frame and feel how it gives you something to press against so that you can start to bend forwards, but keeping your chest open and your spine relatively straight. So bending forwards, pressing down with the hands, and the back of the right hip, it's moved forwards. Just a little bit the right sitting bone, as if it's dragging the seat of the chair in a forward direction towards the wall. Keep the right knee relaxed. And then one hand at a time, we'll bring the hands to the wall. Again, the back of the right hip, it's contained. Imagine someone behind you there holding your yoga block and pushing with the yoga block the back of the right hip deeper into the body. The right sitting bone, it's just a little bit dragging the seat of the chair in a forward direction towards the wall, maximizing the length between the pubic bone and the navel, and keeping the upper back as contained, as straight as possible. Okay, and then release, and we'll change. Right foot down, left ankle up onto the right thigh. Just check the angle of the shin bone, roughly parallel with the wall. Make sure that the left thigh is turning so that the inner thigh, inner groin turns up. The outer thigh near the hip, it turns downwards towards the floor. As we come forwards, leading with the chest, and as we did on that first side, hands back to the frame of the chair. And we've just got something now to press against so that we can come forwards, bending from the hips and keeping the spine nice and straight. The left hip, just feel it tends to get dragged back, and we can press with the left hand just to contain that region of the body back, moving the back of the left hip forwards towards the wall. Lifting the chest out and over the legs towards the wall, one hand at a time then to the wall. I suggested as a starting point having the chair halfway along your yoga mat. By now you might have realised that you need to be a bit closer than that. Equally, if it's hard for you to have space, you might need, particularly for taller people, you might need to be further back and away from the wall. Okay, and then release. So I mentioned earlier we'll be working with some twisting poses. Let's head to them now. We'll keep the chair roughly where it is. We'll fine tune that position once we're sitting through the frame of the chair. And we're going to be placing our left forearm onto the top of the chair and then reaching back with the right hand. If you look to the screen, you can see I'm a little too far away from the wall. For me to reach the wall, I need to lean back with my shoulders behind my hips. So I'll just adjust the chair a little, bringing it in closer to the wall. And at this point, if you look again, I can now have my hand back to the wall with my shoulders turning but staying aligned with my hips. Okay, be ready. Have the left forearm onto the top of the chair and then turning the chest and bringing the right hand back to the wall. As soon as we do that, you might need to glance back at your knees to check it. Notice how the left knee tends to push past the right knee.
So left heel press down and draw the left thigh bone back into the body. Now the right sitting bone, let's let it a little bit tuck under towards the knee, not to the point though where you start to drop the lower back. The lower back moving in, and then the left chest lifting up. The head turns to look towards the right hand. You're lifting the right elbow, but keeping the right shoulder staying down and away from the ear. Just watch the left shoulder, not pushing up towards the ear. Keep that elbow soft on the top of the chair and the shoulder relaxing. Now, keeping that twist in the upper body, we're going to bring the hand from the wall. We reach behind the back and hold the frame of the chair with the fingers. The thumb is pointing upwards. You might need to glance at the screen if you're not getting that from the verbal description. I'm giving you a moment just to check that. Some people, you might need to shuffle the hips a little further through the frame of the chair so that you can reach. And then pulling against the chair as you turn to look towards the wall. Now these next couple of instructions, they are intended to bring you comfortably deeper into the twist. So make sure that you're connecting them to the twisting action that you currently have. And just to bring you that little bit deeper into the twist, as if you're pulling the chair with the right hand towards the wall, as you're looking over the right shoulder. And then still pulling the chair towards the wall, but add a second action whilst doing that, just pressing the chair a little bit away from the torso. You feel just that little bit of extra freedom to turn, left back ribs spreading. Okay, and then release. Now those of you that needed to shuffle your hips further through the chair, it might be that your chair actually needs to be adjusted and moved a little bit further away from the wall. As we now bring the right forearm onto the top of the chair, left hand back to the wall, the right thigh bone, draw it back into the pelvis, left sitting bone, it releases a little subtle movement towards the left knee, too much and we start to drop the lower back. Make sure that the back of the left hip is still contained, moving in, and the spine lifting up. Right waist lifting, right chest lifting, right back ribs spreading, turning the head to look towards the left hand, left elbow lift, left shoulder contained. As the spine lifts, the shoulder stays down and away from the ear. Okay, and then release, and we'll just, to give ourselves a little more room, we'll come out of the chair and then turn the chair around, and then we sit a more regular way of sitting in the chair, feet together, knees together, quite far back in the frame of the chair. We're going to work here with a version of padangusthasana. The right elbow bent, the fingers pointing up, and we're bringing the shoulder past the left knee. We're closing the gap here between the chest and the left thigh. I'll give you a moment just to find that position. Now generally what tends to happen, when we focus on the right shoulder, bringing it across and past the left knee, the head tends to follow. So keeping the shoulder across, bring the head back more into the center. And then as we bring the head back to the center, what tends to happen is that the right chest follows. But now pressing the elbow against the left knee, move the right chest, turn it upwards towards the ceiling. The left hand, we've got it to the top of the chair. We can pull against the chair to help deepen that twisting action. Once we've got it though, we can start to press with the hand against the top of the chair, and it encourages that extra length in the spine. So the thigh creases, they draw back towards the chair. The spine, as it turns, it lengthens out and away from the chair. Okay, and then release, and we'll change sides, bring the left shoulder across, closing the gap between the left armpit and the right thigh. Shoulder comes across, keep it across, bring the head back into the center. Pressing with the elbow and upper arm against the right leg so that the left shoulder blade moves in, so that the left chest turns upwards towards the ceiling. Try walking now the right hand further back across the top of the chair towards the left side. Front ribs turning up, back ribs turning down, keeping the right hand on the frame of the chair, but now pressing against it so that we lengthen the left waist further over the thighs towards the knees. Thigh creases stay back, the waist lengthens and moves towards the knees. Okay, and then release. Malasana, bring the feet a little wider apart so that your shoulders are able to neatly fit down between your inner knees. Now we can reach forwards, fingertips to the floor there in front of the feet. So again, the arms, the shoulders, they fit neatly in between the inner knees. And make sure that your sitting bones are staying anchored. Not just the front of the sitting bones, but the back of the sitting bones. Keep them firmly pressing down into the seat of the chair. As we then fold the arms, just let the neck release and the head hang. Keep your heels pressing firmly to the floor. Keep your sitting bones anchored back and into the seat of the chair. And then reaching through the legs of the chair. Many yoga chairs will have a crossbar. Generally you need to either come above it or below it. For me, I'm coming above it. And I've also got a crossbar in between the back legs of the chair. I'm holding that. If you don't have the crossbar, you're just holding the back legs of the chair. If you can't reach the back legs of the chair, try shuffling further back with your hips coming further through the frame. If still you can't reach it, it might be that you need to have a belt and wrap the belt around the legs of the chair and pull against the belt that way. Once you've got the grip there of the chair or using the belt, lift your head, look across the room, move your chest forwards, and keep your sitting bones anchored down. A really good pose for maximizing the length, giving it quite a clear sense of comfortable traction. Really good if you're experiencing that feeling of compression in the lower back. Okay, and then release and come up. We'll use the chair at the end of the class for our Shavasana, so don't put it too far away. However, we will need a little bit of room to either side now as we go to supta, padangusthasana. So place your chair somewhere where it's not going to obstruct your ability to bring your leg out to the side. You may need a blanket for your head here. Make sure that your chin and forehead are level. Take your belt. It's not important that the belt is looped. It often works better to actually have the belt unbuckled for this particular pose. We're lying then on our back, both feet to the wall, feet together, and bend the right knee up into the chest. Keep the right outer thigh crease moving to the wall so that the hips are level. Take your belt, place your belt around the ball of the right foot and raise your right leg up. Move the right outer thigh crease to the wall so that your hips are level. Now that instruction is giving a detailed part of the body. There's actually part of the skin, part of the muscle. But it's important also that you feel it where the skeleton is. So at the root of the thigh bone, where the right thigh bone joins the pelvis, move it closer to the wall. Feel it on the back of the pelvis, those bones there at the back of the right hip, move towards the wall. Now to get that, I'm actually resisting with the belt, but pressing my foot into the belt, it gives me the leverage to move the right side of the pelvis closer to the wall. But just ease off on that for a moment. Just let the right foot be just a little more passive in its contact with the belt. And then work more actively with the arms, bending the elbows out to the side so that you start to angle the right leg further over. As the foot comes away from the wall, move the thigh crease towards the wall. Left thigh press down and the left foot press into the wall. We'll go straight to the second variation. Bring your belt into your right hand, bring your left arm out to the side. Just today have the palm facing up. and bring the right leg down and out to the side without the left thigh lifting. I've got my right elbow to the floor just to help keep the pose balanced, otherwise the tendency is for the left side to tip up and the right side to get heavy and sink down. The right outer thigh crease towards the wall. As we do that, the right sitting bone actually moves a little closer to the left leg. See if you can find that. The right sitting bone, move it towards the left inner groin. The right buttock towards the left buttock. And the left side of the sacrum, move it towards the floor. Okay, and then raise the leg back up and we'll change sides. Starting with the left knee bent into the chest. Left outer thigh crease towards the wall. Belt then around the ball of the left foot and take the leg up. Supta padangusthasana, first variation. Left outer thigh crease towards the wall. Feel it deeper into the body where the bones are. The left thigh bone near the hip socket towards the wall. The bones at the back of the left hip towards the wall. Keeping the hips level with the arms now, just bend the elbows and without the knee bending, let the leg tilt further over away from the wall. Imagine someone had a rope in the left thigh crease and with that rope pulling the thigh crease towards the wall, but without the foot following. Belt then into the left hand, right arm out to the side, bringing the left leg down and out to the side without the right thigh lifting. Right thigh press down, right foot press into the wall. Left outer thigh crease towards the wall. Now to get that leverage, I'm resisting with the belt, but pressing the foot into the belt, and it gives me that ability to move the outer thigh crease towards the wall. The left sitting bone towards the right inner groin. The left buttock, as a consequence of those actions, it's brought towards the right buttock. The right side of the sacrum pressed down. You might need to even lift the left leg up a little in order to get that. The right side of the sacrum down. Okay, and then the leg raise up, belt off to the side, both knees up into the chest, fingers interlocked around the heads of the shin bones. And then lifting the face towards the knees. Keep pressing the back waist down. Feel it broaden as it presses down. Okay, and then bringing the head back to the floor, letting the feet return to the floor. Roll to the side. As I mentioned, we'll use the chair for our last pose, Shavasana. A really nice restful version of Shavasana for the lower back. Make sure that you've got your blanket for your head, half fold blanket for your head, lying on your back, with your calves resting up onto the seat of the chair. A few moments to settle there. So obviously the lower back has more length here. You'll feel the front of the pelvis, where the pubic bone is, moves naturally a little in the direction of the navel. It's not that it robs the space, the abdomen of space, that whole abdominal area. It sits a little more towards the chest region, and on the other side of the body, the back waist area, it's tucked under a little towards the chair. It's a nice natural balance there. So creating space for both the abdominal region and the back waist area at the same time. Making sure that you're now relaxing in the pose. Make sure that your calves are passively resting down into the seat of the chair. Check it as you inhale. Whilst inhaling, calves descending. Check that through a few of the regions of the body. Whilst inhaling, the back of the pelvis descending. dropping back to the floor as the chest lifts. Whilst breathing in, shoulders, elbows, hands gravitating down. Feel the weight of the skull in that area where the skull rests to the blanket. Whilst breathing in, let the skull gravitate down. Chest feels up, the skull releases with gravity downwards. The eyes as well, breathing in, letting the eyes drop back. We've got good sensitivity to the skull, not just on the surface, but also the inside of the skull. We can often feel pressure in that area. Whilst breathing in, let the sense of pressure reduce within the skull. It's as if the brain just a little bit gravitates more towards the back of the skull and loosens its contact with the forehead region of the skull. Smooth, soft inhalation, smooth, soft exhalation. Okay, and then a couple of slightly deeper in-breaths as we prepare to come out of the pose. From there you can bend your knees up into your chest. From there, open your eyes, roll to the side, and then as you're ready, coming up. Thank you for practicing with Yoga Selection.